the recording. So welcome everyone to Younergy Crypto School. This is our last iteration of these two blocks, Web3 Basics, and next week, ReFi. Yes, so in these schools or in these sessions, our intention to actually give you really everything we gathered on these topics, but also we give examples from Younergy Crypto, like how are we applying these basics, and also how are we participating in this new field or consolidating field of regenerative finance, of using DeFi and Web3 principles and mechanisms to actually rewire the value flows so we coordinate and channel funding towards regenerative projects and not just towards maximizing profits. So a bit to ourselves and also Younergy Crypto. Younergy is a solar as a service scale up from Switzerland. They're scaling into Europe. They're in Spain, Portugal, they started, and coming to Germany. I am Sebnem and the chief activist of Younergy Crypto. Younergy Crypto is an alternative finance solution for Younergy, but also being Web3 native, we are developing it into an open protocol that more solar asset owners like Younergy can participate. And of course, for Web3 native participants of offsetters. And we will go into the details next week as well. It's not just about offsetting, but really incentivizing to go greener. And that's why tokenization is really important. My main activities as an activist is really sharing my background, which I gained in decentralized energy at Siemens as an applied researcher. And decentralized energy, solar, Web3 has been my focus since 2017 when I left Siemens to actually do the applied research, which you can only do out in the open and on public blockchain. Within Younergy Crypto, I have been doing the systems architecture, so any integration, but also ecosystem architecture. That's a scheme that we developed during token engineering beginnings. Token engineering academies first course was designed using this method of ecosystem value flows, which I based the token model generation of. We will have time if you join the community to go through this. And Paula, if you also share a few words to your background and what you do for Younergy Crypto, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Paula. I'm the ecosys activist, as I see. And yeah, my background is actually fashion design and also 3D design. And I've been working on Web3 projects since 5 years now, also as a partnership growth and business development manager. And yeah, as I'm always circling around the topics, how to make also the fashion industry more sustainable, I ended up again after years with Sebnem, learning more about ReFi, which I learned a lot already. And yeah, so we try to interweave this also with Younergy a bit on the sustainable fashion aspect. But more to come about that after we make our little adventure in Portugal in the next weeks.
Put more solar onto sustainable fashion producers' production facilities. Let's see. So there are super interesting developments, but of course it also requires that we find partners who are innovative at both domains, and that is always an interesting search and outreach topic. So I'm happy that Paula is with us. Good. Today's Web3 Basics topics will go into the concept of self-sovereignty, basically your keys, your coins, but what that really mean, and the technicality, just a quick overview, really. Again, we want to have these sessions separated, but also topical community calls around each aspect of what we, gloss over today. In this topic of participation through actually public key infrastructure, more or less, where you sign your transaction, you own your values that are accounted for on a global ledger, and basically not you, but the account owns it. There are difficulties around that with respect to actually getting the hang of really managing your keys. Because that's your what you own on a ledger, or that what controls what you own on a ledger. And the topic of account abstraction, I will briefly touch. It's really good because it makes it easier to handle both for individuals as well as organizations like Younergy Crypto. So we will definitely have community calls on these topics and providers of solutions. The second part is what's in a token. Very briefly, we will go into the Ethereum standards that have been de facto standards, that they are even in other chains, implemented in other chains. That's super interesting because that level of standardization is what allows us to interact value over the internet or exchange value over the internet. We will have examples of the Younergy Crypto tokens, just overview, again, just glossing over, but we will definitely have open engineering sessions and community calls. We will dig deeper into specific aspects. Then the third part will be about decentralized exchanges. That's what truly allows you to be in crypto and not just into crypto and buying and selling tokens on centralized exchanges, but really participating in this value exchange. And last but not least, how do we organize as individuals and groups, collectives around the premise and premise of decentralized exchanges and the primitives of decentralized finance that have been battle tested in the past 2 years. Before that they were emerging, but now I would say the infrastructure that we're using are quite battle tested. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat, or if you want to, think about all of this and come back with questions, you're most welcome. Do that. We have a discourse for it. Within the discourse, we have topics. We're just creating this forum for participation. But you will also already find the Web3 Basics chat where you can just ask anything, really, and I will look that we get answers and that we get introductions for participants as well. Again, I'm hoping today's call is also a call for participation for community coaches, course designers to actually join in and raise their hands for being potential hosts for the next episode of Younergy Crypto Schools. We have a lot more content or background ideas that we could actually implement if we have more hands on this, such as, why do we mint, buy, sell tokens, not just how. There is really cool book that came out from Kevin Owoki, Gitcoin's ex-CEO, and now community lead, I would say, of Super Modular, a regenerator. No, is it an incubator of ReFi? It's called Stuff Crypto OGs Knows. I just got it today. I look forward to it, but I'm sure there are some things that we really also want to share within the Younergy Crypto community. And we definitely want to share as part of the Web3 Basics course. excursions we could have into decentralized finance, regenerative finance, again, the beginnings of it, what are the connections, that we go much deeper into those. Again, the book of Kevin, Take the Green Pill, that gives the Web3 native view on this second movement of sustainability and blockchain, I would call it, or second wave. Before we dive in, what is Younergy Crypto's learning ecosystem? There is one kernel community, for sure. Both Paula and I are kernel fellows. It's more about this philosophy behind Web3, joyfully subverting the status quo, the way of Web3, I would call it. There is a lot of thought and support system coming from kernel community. ReFi DAO is a pretty new organization that is a founder-led Web3 regenerator, not an accelerator, but regenerator. And of course, Token Engineering Commons, which is focused on the sustainable and ethical design for token ecosystems, which is very important when we are bridging real-world assets and our solar partner networks. These are the value networks. When we're bridging them to crypto, we want to make sure that people and participants are safe, can keep themselves safe, and also that the token models that we are designing, deploying, but also collectively governing are designed with ethical principles. Now, finally, we get into self-sovereignty. I will run through this because it really goes into the basics, and some of you may, or I know many of you are already in, but maybe it's really about highlighting what is of value not to forget here. Self-sovereignty translates, or your keys, your coins, that phrase from crypto, that translates into self-sovereignty. So your keys, if you keep them safe, then your tokens, the signifiers of your transactions on blockchain are yours. No one can take these away from you, but once you lose your secret recovery phase to someone else, they own basically this account, right? Again, these are all links that you should know about, but basically these accounts are so-called externally owned accounts, and anyone with the key, anyone with the secret recovery phrase can reinstantiate them on using any browser. So that's why you have to keep these safe. These are private keys encrypted using your password in your browser's data store on your device. There is no one you can call up and say, I forgot my password, or not even a link that can restore yours. However, yes, just quickly, what is it that you're keeping safe, that you can use a password manager? But again, that password manager will require a master password that needs to be very good, and that you have to keep safe. Here are fun links to places where people keep these passwords safe, just as inspiration. But here is really getting into becoming more accustomed with password or key management, so you get accustomed to the best practices and really feel safe. Before that, don't even get really deep into Web3, because this is where your safety starts. Again, here are more links for additional security. You could use a hardware wallet like a two-factor authentication. You could use separate browser profiles. These are all links explaining these aspects. Again, I would go into this once I feel comfortable with this passport manager and the basic setup. However, it's really worth going into these account abstractions, like using not just this account, but a smart contracts-based solution that adds more functionality, more value, or more ease of use to your experience. Multi-signature wallets are some solution like this, where you basically have a wallet that is governed by multiple keys. You could even use it for your personal convenience. So you're not afraid of losing that one key and everything is lost, but these two keys can help you to keep a bit of safety. But also for organizations, this is what is currently being used to actually make sure that transactions aren't just with one person, but at least the entire group, and there is transaction transparency and so on. One such example is Safe, formerly known as Gnosis Safe. That's the typical or the earliest instantiation of this account abstraction, meaning from the account you actually get more logic and ease of use and more functionality, because Safe is a construct of multiple smart contracts taking care of more than just multisigs, but policies that are implemented, roles, permissions, recovery mechanisms. So you have this social recovery that you could be implementing. This is one topic we will definitely go into details in community calls, because it's also how we are managing. We're going to be managing the Younergy Crypto Community funds as a collective. And here again, just a few links. You can also read up. Safe is also organized as a DAO. So they're also offering services for other organizations to actually implement even these logics or customize the logic of Safe and the capabilities of Safe to fulfill the needs of a decentralized autonomous organization or collective that is transacting on-chain, value on-chain, like fraud monitoring, spending policies. These are really, really good features for actually efficient DAO processes. DAO being decentralized autonomous organizations. We go into at the end of this session today. What is in a token? We will have token model workshops and go into the deepest ends of this pool, if you like. Here are two links at the end: what's in a token and value creation, capture, and distribution patterns. These are articles from A Hitchhiker's Guide to Token Engineering. Definitely worth reading into. I'm just putting this up so you're not frustrated, because we're going to really see the tip of the iceberg. But rest assured, for Younergy Crypto's token model, we will have community calls where we really go into the details of Younergy Crypto model. But also, I would love to make it possible that at least within ReFi DAO, we have these ecosystem value flow sessions. So definitely follow on Twitter or subscribe to the newsletter if you're interested in actually taking part or listening into these ecosystem value flows, token model workshops, and more. This is very high level overview. To the right, you see everything that is on a public blockchain, IPFS, that actually stores the metadata, and the 3 smart contracts that we have, and how token holders or participants or the YC governance multisig is interacting with these tokens. Deep dive into that, as said, in community calls and token model workshops. Highlights of what's in those tokens, like the fungible token, the YC token, and the non-fungible token, the YCo2 NFT, that is signifying a carbon credit that one can directly mint to offset in one's own wallet. That we will go into today. Next session on ReFi, we will look into this pink area where it says data. Again, that is the data that comes from the solar rooftops, that comes from data providers who look into carbon intensity and provide the data of carbon intensity of a power grid locally. And this is how we calculate the CO2 emissions avoided when we have solar rooftops installed projects funded in regions. And that's where the metadata is calculated. Next session, we will go deep into that. So I'm leaving it here like this. And open engineering, again, stay tuned for invites. In the first community call, that will be the topic, the 22nd of March, Wednesdays, 5 p.m. CT, and that one will be on smart contract logic and the audits we did with Verilog and Magic Powered. What's in a token? As you definitely heard, the ERC20, actually it's called EIP20, but it took hold so fast that it went from being a request for comment, meaning an idea that someone shared with the Ethereum community, to actually, transacting billions of fiat into Ethereum over the internet, and helped transact so much value, but also so much scams that we know of, and which we want to, through self-regulation and through more informed participation, we want to keep out of the ecosystem, definitely out of Younergy Crypto ecosystem. We definitely need these this immune system, which is in the participants. So you keeping safe keeps the system safe, because these tokens and the interactions actually are pretty simple once you are on-chain and once you are transacting with this fungible token. Now let's get into what is defined in this token smart contract. In the standard, not much. You can add more value added functions into these contracts, but the standard just says what's the name of this token, what's the symbol. And in the initial ICO wave, this total supply was the absolute value function, because if it's capped, then it creates artificial scarcity, so that people value that and participate in the network just based off of that, which is of course dangerous. We see now more and more continuous models, so the supply actually adapts with the growth of the network value, but also can shrink through buybacks and burns or different mechanisms. It with the name, of course, you have the same thing as a brand, even a personal brand, like what are the tokens that I'm holding in my wallet, can become something, especially in the regenerative finance domain, actually identifiers or signal and selling points, right? Don't tell me what you think, tell me what you have in your portfolio, is actually a saying that suits very well into this. And again, whether it being implemented through additional logic on-chain or through off-chain social norms and processes and rules that we follow, we can build a rights, rewards, and utility logic around these fungible tokens. Now, in the example of Younergy Crypto, we have the YC token. Younergy Crypto token. That is, actually we started with that because it signifies the participation as a community in gathering funds and putting those funds into solar rooftops. And then we wanted to share the value of those solar rooftops. And actually it's not value, but values. Of course, there's the financial value, which is a revenue share, but also the environmental value. As I mentioned, the CO2 emissions avoided that we can calculate easily in a data-driven way and put into distributed metadata storage systems to actually signify and have the community validate that data. These are the values that we can share with the participants or with the people who make solar funding possible through these constructs that we have with the YC token and the YCo2 token and the revenue share contract. So the YC token is very simple. It has the exchange rate. So if I put in XDAI, how much do I get? How much YC tokens do I get for one XDAI, for example? Then we have the whitelist that you can put your name and wallet into, or email address and wallet into, so we can have a communication with the participants when needed. That will be whitelisted. You can just click on the participate button on yc.finance and leave that information there, and the sale that we start. And for example, this function can be called multiple times because we want to have these continuous models. So the first emission will only be projects in Portugal to test and to also kickstart the community. But then with the growth, actually the community can decide which other regions where we are, what type of projects we want to fund. And then we can decide upon new emissions, and that goes into funding new solar and new participants. Good. And it inherits interfaces through typical standardized logics that, again, in the Ethereum ecosystem are being developed and improved and tested. So that's one thing we gain by actually using standards that are already implemented, battle tested, and so on, that we can build on the shoulders of giants. The reward distributions, again, version 2 is already in plan, but the first version is really only the revenue share distribution that is on chain, that as a YC token holder, you can claim whatever revenue share is deposited by the YC governance into our common pool. And you could either just put it back into more YC tokens, or you can claim it and do whatever you want with it. So YC token holders can also claim the carbon value of these new solar projects. Whatever is your share with the YC tokens that you're holding from the currently funded pool and its incoming carbon value, you can mint your share as often as you like. So YC token is not yet deployed. As mentioned, we've been just through the security audits last week, and we will finalize the report, and by the time of 8th Porto, 16th to 17th, 18th March next week, we'll hopefully share with you the good news that you can participate also directly. Then a typical non-fungible tokens are ERC-721 and ERC-1155. Again, just putting these there that you could Google if you'd like. But the common denominator of non-fungible tokens is their uniqueness that is given by the fact that these tokens have an ID and a token URI, meaning a pointer to where the metadata is. So you can always signify who is the owner and what is the state of this token. And that connection is one-to-one. So these are unique and non-fungible. So different, each token is different. So with these two simple uniqueness attributes, you can implement certificates, credentials, and again, implement entire rights and reward systems around these. What we have is in Younergy Crypto, the YCo2 credits that are implemented as simple ERC 721s. With one addition, we added the non-transferability logic. So if you mint this token directly, it becomes non-transferable in your wallet. And that is the logic of offsetting, of taking this carbon credit off the market so no one else can use it. And it signifies that you're basically offsetting something of that CO2 value. For example, we use it to offset our flights, minting 400 kilograms for the next flights to Lisbon and Porto. For example, if you follow us on Twitter, you will see examples of how we do it, and you can follow. Now, getting back, what is in this non-fungible token? Again, lots of data and beauty made from this data and so on. We will go into that next session. So come by to go into what is in this YCo2 credit token. What is the metadata, how we collect it, how we plausibilize it, and how we actually put it on a distributed file system that is Web3 native. So your tokens and that value is always accessible as long as these decentralized infrastructures are accessible. And the point of a global ledger is that they're not dependent on a single player, not even dependent on the issuer of these tokens. So what's in this YCo2 credit? The data granularity, high-low. This is an A/B test that we're currently doing. Again, next week, we'll go into the logic and into the meaning of these much more. The price of the carbon offset, again, topic for refi, definitely come by. And who can speak to these token, the admin role, API role, because this is how we are putting the data and putting the token on chain once you are calling as a user the mint to offset function, where it's mint to, and so on. And the revenues, admin role can withdraw. So this is the revenues that we get from the offsetters who use this protocol, and part of the revenues goes to protocol maintenance, because that's what users will want. And whatever we don't need for every iteration goes directly into funding that iteration's solar pools. So the revenue of offsetting is also community managed and goes into efforts that help us realize the short, mid, and long-term goals that Younergy Crypto has. Good, and as said here, the ERC 721 metadata interface tells us this has a name, symbol, and a unique resource identifier. That's the pointer to the metadata on IPFS. Good. Once we have these tokens, we can create token models. We can play with little refi Legos. We already have 2 here that you can actually, and we have done this, We have changed the logic how we are composing them, and all of a sudden we now have a very different offering than the one we set out to after listening to the stakeholders and seeing how the market is developing. We actually made real good use of the possibilities of tokenization to prove additionality and so on. Again, these are values that are given by the ecosystem. What is additionality and what is it valuable? We will listen and learn about it in the next session, in the refi session. Good. Any questions until now?
When you were talking about the non-fungible token and the and basically retiring the token, and then I guess the other side is the ones you do not retire, and then those tokens kind of stay in the I guess your marketplace. And what is the future of those two tokens? What are they going to be doing there? And
very good question. Yes, so today if you go to YC Finance, maybe we just quickly do. I connect my wallet here. So and you say basically you want to offset. I need to reconnect, but let's go through this. Oh no, okay. I won't do that because I don't want to risk sharing my screen while I need to look up my password in my password manager. That's best practice.
no worries.
So, but what I want to show is, and maybe you have seen it, is that today you can only click mint to offset.
Mm-hmm.
We also have mint to trade, but that is definitely a function we want to decide upon with the community. Because for Younergy Crypto, it's short-term goal, long mid-term goal. We don't have to sell the carbon value at commodity prices, because it's not really an incentive for anything. No. It's not even an incentive for the solar installers of these projects to actually go and do it traditionally or in refi, right? So we want to create new incentive mechanisms around these. And again, next week, we actually go into these discussions, but these are open points. We have the option to say, to implement the function mint to trade, and that will basically get rid of this restriction that it's non-transferable.
Okay.
How and why would we want to do that? If there are really good marketplaces or carbon pools where the incentives are becoming bigger and meaningful. Currently, the carbon offsets or the carbon value trades as commodity for euros. Yeah. And that is at most used for greenwashing, but not really for creating incentives for any one stakeholder. So we would still maybe have a community exchange. So for example, if I'm funding a lot solar rooftops through YC token and get much more YCo2 credits than I personally use, I would like to maybe sell them to you. Mm-hmm. Right. So within the community, these are the features we can decide upon moving forward. Today, we know there is the offset value that some people, you know, whatever I do, if I have to take a flight, I am causing pollution. Yeah. So that one I can. And then we have a really interesting, as I mentioned, interesting reward mechanism around that you actually get to participate from those revenues going into solar rooftops, get to participate in YC tokens. So you have these incentives to offset to actually see and participate into funding more solar. Again, I see those as mindset shifters, but the future of this is very much open, I would say.
Oh, I hear you. Thank you.
Good. And for that, again, we need to know and learn about decentralized exchanges as well, because if you want to even have a community exchange, we would need to use some sort of established or a logic that we adopt. If we want to participate, let's say we decide to participate in carbon pools, again, everything goes through decentralized exchanges. For that, many things need to be known first. Number one, which chain are we on? And that was the biggest decision. Last year, we talked about a lot. Should we use Ethereum? Using Ethereum is still prohibitive. It's not so much because it's now proof of stake, but it's meaning it has a much lower environmental or carbon footprint as electricity consumption or consumer. But still, the volatility of ETH doesn't do, and the really how high the transaction cost can become is prohibitive for a case like solar. Solar has over the mass steady revenue flows, but definitely much smaller sizes, and we will have a community that shares and transacts much smaller sizes. So Ethereum is currently really for if you have something lower than 1K to transact, you shouldn't use it because it doesn't pay off. Yes, Visa would get dreamy eyes if they could get so much transaction cost as Ethereum currently gets. We have Polygon as an alternative. These are side chains, so-called side chains that bridge to Ethereum. I will go into that in a second, but have their own token. Polygon is proof of stake and was proof of stake chain much long or a year or so before Ethereum went proof of stake. And during that time, you see how much of a market share it gained in DeFi. Polygon has only 100 validators. That's pretty strange to think it's decentralized. It has 49% lower fees than Ethereum, but still Matic, the native token of Polygon, is traded. So it has volatile costs. And that is something we said, no, it doesn't make sense. We cannot do that. The alternatives that are now emerging are layer 2 solutions. These are EVM, meaning Ethereum Virtual Machine extending, L1 extending solutions, meaning they inherit the security of Ethereum. However, there is a really good video I will link. I haven't. It came from Denver, where basically it's being discussed how the current stage of L2 solutions is still a meme. So it's not really implemented. It's not really decentralized and so on, but definitely getting there. However, as said, we needed a solution now. And there, Gnosis and Silo are super interesting. And we went for Gnosis because it has both fixed transaction costs and low transaction costs because of X-type. And it is also very distributed through over 100,000 validators. So that's super, super interesting, important, is what we value. However, every bridge chain, meaning if you have to use this bridge to get to the chain because your other assets are on Ethereum, for example, or you want to move from XDAI into DAI, you have to use this bridge, or you stay in Gnosis chain. then this doesn't concern us. But for example, we will also bridge, so this is interesting for us too. Maybe we have alternatives with the account abstraction number 2. We'll get to that in a moment, but just for now that you know this is the risk. Also for using a side chain, the bridges are additional smart contracts that create additional attack surfaces, and Polygon's bridge, which held, I think, over 850 million at risk because of a bug, was almost hacked, but then because of a bounty, security bounty as high as 2 million, that helped the hacker, which likely was a white hat hacker, meaning a good hacker anyways, to actually report this bug responsibly without risking any hacks, or without having this bug cause the loss of the 850 millions in the bridge. That's interesting. That's interesting also to know that a 2 million bug bounty can make a really good white hat hacker to help secure the bridge. So on Gnosis, the chain that we're using, we have these bridges between DAI, between Ethereum and Gnosis chain, and specifically DAI, which is a stable coin on Ethereum. And it's bridged token XDAI. And XDAI is then like, or it is the native token of Gnosis chain, but it is basically bridged from Ethereum. So that's the connection. There's a whole history. If you wanted, you could read up on how Gnosis came to actually have that XDAI solution. But Gnosis itself, again, is one of the oldest DAOs as well, which is really good, backed by its own treasury, which is really important also to know who are behind the network, who are the funders, validators behind the network, and so on. And again, what is super interesting is that Gnosis chain has around 115,000 or so validators, and it's second to Ethereum, where Ethereum has around 400,000 or 500,000 validators. So that's the level of this decentralization where I say this is really great. The bridges, again, they have their own decentralization logic or bottleneck at the moment, because as you see the trust model, so it's 6 parties that own the multisig, meaning the key that can change any logic in the smart contract, and 4 are needed to change or to transact through that multisig. The governance model is 7 of 16, and the parameters that can be changed through governance are who are the validators in the bridge, the daily limits of bridging between those two, and the fees of bridging. Yes, and again, one important information is that the bridge or bridges or bridge has 2 ends, that and 2 smart contracts, and that these have at least 2 smart contracts, that these have bug bounties up to 2 million, and also managed by Immunify, this organization that basically deals in white hackers. Again, for our purposes, Younergy Crypto could be entirely on Gnosis chain, remain on Gnosis chain with the validators and so on. For most or for all current participants of Younergy Crypto, Gnosis chain does the job brilliantly. So buying XDAI directly actually gets rid of this on off ramp through the chains, through the bridges. but then also as interacting with solar partners, and actually we need to off-ramp into fiat so we can install solar rooftops in Europe. We definitely need to have this on and off ramp. And just in the recent weeks, we heard of Monerium that just also started to offer e-money, meaning we can have an IBAN, which is fantastic, directly connected, or directly connected to our address on Gnosis chain, or my address in Gnosis chain. So that's super interesting. The reason why we start on Gnosis chain, again, the validators, that low cost of gas, 0.001, negligible. And third, last but not least, is their focus on being carbon negative. Since the start, they have been using Offsetra and off-chain credits. Now that we are on Gnosis chain, we definitely want to develop with them a solution and offer it or make it attractive for the Gnosis chain itself to offset using native token like YCo2 credits. And since we're all data driven and tokenized, we could do this offsetting game in real time. Actually, while the chain is being validated, we calculate hourly carbon footprint from the electricity consumption of the nodes with their locations, and have in real time the offset from the solar rooftops that are being funded through the offset revenues. So as you see, this is, and that lets my geek heart shine. And one more important point maybe to highlight here is the developer experience, and also that we have access to DeFi protocols, similar or even the same organizations as they are offered by on Ethereum. So 1inch is such a protocol, a decentralized exchange, and that we have both on Ethereum and on Gnosis chain, which is maintained by the same organization. So that's perfect. CowSwap is super interesting. I think it is Gnosis ecosystem native. Curve is another protocol, a DeFi protocol that again is natively, or not natively, sorry. It's provided by the same organization that manages it on Ethereum, and that same organization also has deployed it on Gnosis chain. So again, here from our point of view, we're not reinventing registries or reinventing decentralized finance. We say these are given, like a ledger is a registry. And we have now with YCo2 a Web3 native token that signifies carbon credits from solar rooftops directly. And also with respect to DeFi, like these exchanges and what we can do with the values that the YC token can accrue. We want to use DeFi primitives that exist, not reinventing. So this is how we gain in Web3 this super fast innovation cycles, because we build on each other's protocols and experiences and progress. And it's refi when the yield comes through regeneration. We'll go into that next session. Now, this was just sharing with you some of the things that one needs to know about the ecosystem, which is the chain. So it's its own little cosmos, and Gnosis chain is within the bigger Ethereum cosmos, and so on. And knowing that is important, and knowing what is available on these chains and is important. Knowing what is the main culture even in an ecosystem is super important. before we can actually safely use these protocols that make up decentralized exchanges as well. If you are entirely new to finance, then order books and market makers are links that you should definitely also read up on. But these are the things that exchanges need to happen. Like people, like market makers who always offer to exchange, so there's liquidity, so that traders or people who need to exchange from one currency to the other or one token to the other don't have to pay huge fees because the liquidity is so small. So these are existing notions, and in crypto, we went from those things that are basically lists and people doing things to smart contracts and participants doing things. And one such smart contracts or participants doing things is like a liquidity pool and an automated market maker. Now, let's look at this graph, which is called a constant product market maker. It is a smart contract agent. So it's an automated market maker, which is a very simple exchange logic. So the larger, the more ETH you want to purchase, and the smaller incremental amounts of Bitcoin you would get, or wrapped Bitcoin. So let's not get into that. But this is the logic of an automated market maker in a decentralized exchange, implemented in a decentralized exchange. And now people can provide these tokens so that the automated market maker can automatically make the exchanges. The providers are called liquidity providers, and they have an incentive, because otherwise these tokens that I have are just there in my wallet doing nothing. But if I put them into a smart contract construct that manages this liquidity pool between two tokens, then basically both of my tokens are gaining or creating value. They're helping other people to exchange. And that's why I get the liquidity pool token, which is a reward. And as long as I hold this liquidity pool token, this decentralized exchange shares with me a portion of the protocol fees that they get from the trader or from the exchanger with me, because I am helping the protocol to actually have tokens to exchange. Again, as you see, we have smart contracts, we have tokens, people, and the logic that creates an incentive mechanisms using these code-based agents and human agents to provide a service coordinated entirely without a central authority. There are interesting aspects like trust metrics. So how do I know which exchange I could use? Of course, people use the ones that are beta tested and the ones that are most used. And one such trust metric of most use is the total value locked, the TVL. You can read on this. You can go to defilama.com, which is a nice overview of these decentralized exchanges, but also other DeFi protocols on many chains. You can compare them just to get an idea of what it is. Here are just two things that I want to highlight. So you, and especially also people participating in Younergy Crypto Community, really understand what it is they are participating in when they're using an exchange. How should they choose one? Because every one of us are on our own, and we are responsible to keep ourselves safe, and that is the immune system that is going to keep the value of Younergy Crypto token network safe. again. I think that's what I want to highlight with self-sovereign or safe self-sovereignty. Now, one thing we look into is this protocol that is now on Gnosis chain. Is this new? Is this a fork, meaning it has been forked from another project on Ethereum? And also we look into, is this a fork from the original team or another group? And if that was a fork from another group, is that friendly, meaning it's unofficial, but is it a friendly or not so friendly? These are the things that make the difference and that are not somehow engineered or automated. So these are really still the human stuff that is going around in these DAOs and DeFi and decentralized exchanges. For example, here, Honeyswap is an unofficial but friendly fork, and they've been there since the beginning of, before Gnosis chain of Xstar. And that's why you see this nice, steady usage curve. And these are the things that we look for when we, and when I say we, I mean everyone, every participant individually, we look for when we want to transact or exchange from YC token to other tokens and so on, or want to buy more. Everything will be through DeFi and decentralized exchanges. So we only offer one Lego block, and the other Lego blocks the participants put together to create and share value over the internet. Just leaving this here, this concept of a fork is actually comes from open source development, and Linux is a big example. You can read up on the culture of that, and all protocols that we would be using and recommending or connecting to are open source. And one big step milestone for Younergy Crypto is also to become more and more open source. So the smart contracts are going to be open source first, and then the digital carbon part, one after the other. Okay, this is a slide I just leave there for your enjoyment and the links as well. Again, just to say, if you are super new to Web3, it's the first time you're going to exchange anything, feel free to reach out to us in the community. Keep safe, learn. There are materials also out there. It can feel very strange to enter crypto. And that's this lemon coin comedy. And that is still funny, and for people who are entering crypto for the first time, it still feels like that. But once we're in crypto, there are things we can do faster, better, without intermediaries. We can do collectively, and then also like YCo2 token, we can tokenize values that are invisible in the current system. Like there is no value attached to saving carbon or saving carbon emissions or avoiding carbon emissions to be created in the first place. And these are things that we can tokenize. So once in Web3, definitely there is an entire open world of value exchanges that we can design. If you're new, again, learn, it will pay off. It's fun, but really be cautious, and just using this YCo2 token to offset and so on gives you experience. I think, you know, there not much can go wrong, and we can find ways if things went wrong in a way. Again, we're not going to have customer service or anything. We count off the self-sovereign participation of every single token holder. Otherwise, it won't become a decentralized autonomous organization, which is the ideal we're going for. Okay.
Perfect.
You can watch that later. Account abstraction number 2. Yes, the post-Lemonade coin era. Now, Monerium is one example that makes use of this account abstraction, also creates even another feature that can be added. The e-money euro on Ethereum is a great interview. Please have a look at it. We're going to use Monerium as an organization to on Offramp towards solar rooftops and also the revenue shares. We have this IBAN interface finally, and it is a feature now available on Gnosis chain within Safe and so on. So it's fantastic, and I think this example of account abstraction that just shows, okay, we're getting there. It won't feel so funny anymore entering and interacting with a Web3 native service like Younergy Crypto. We're getting there. Decentralized finance. There are more DeFi, more concepts or primitives that are based on the same logic that we saw with this smart contract, automating a function like the market making and using smart contracts to put tokens into something, into another smart contract that gives you another token that signifies you're providing a service to the protocol. That's why you can get shares of. So these are the concepts that are all revolving around the same similar pattern, which is looking at the composability of smart contracts. Just briefly, yield farming. Is it much more different than earning interest? I don't think so. I think it's very simple financial instrument implemented with automating the logic using smart contracts, which is basically you provide your crypto directly or through other DeFi protocols into liquidity pools or into lending and borrowing DeFi protocols, and your tokens or your participation token earns those interests, for example, right? Finance as usual. However, the underlying smart contract compositions, the DeFi Legos, it's definitely something worth looking into also in refi, right? I already say that the 2 contracts that we already have 2 pieces of refi Legos that we can compose differently. So that's already interesting. Staking, as there are 2 different staking that one talks about. One is providing your the chain's native token, like ETH for Ethereum, providing it into staking pools so that Ethereum that is now proof of stake, that those staking pools can actually back validators and gain the stakers staking rewards. So what happens is your crypto is put behind a staking node or validator node, and the higher stake nodes have a greater chance to be chosen for validating a transaction, meaning they get then the rewards for validation, and that rewards is shared back with you as a staker. You might also gain the right to participate in governance by earning governance tokens. And I still haven't changed that. It shouldn't say platform fees, but actual protocol fees. That's different. Staking rewards, if it comes from a token project or dApp, for locking your tokens for a time, especially if it's in the beginning and there is no utility. You can interpret that if everyone is well intended as a marketing cost. So you are a participant, you know, you are the first ones of the ones who are supporting this app or the token project, and the more people participate to counteract behind the sale pressure, you basically say, okay, I'm going to lock up my tokens, I'm not selling, but and those token rewards come then from the growth of the network. So as you see, if it is not well implemented or even maliciously, this is the pure definition of a Ponzi scheme, right? So it's very important that you know that the utility of the network is there, but it needs growth and you want to fund that growth. And that's why you participate in this project and in the staking program. Again, everything is permissionless. No one makes you do it. So it is each participant's own research and own intelligence and own questions that keeps this protocol providers truthful, right? And also keeps them accountable. And also through your participation and contributions, this utility will come and grow. Again, these are the things that self-sovereign participants need to be aware and know what is it that they're doing, and that they're not participating in a Ponzi scheme. So that much self-sovereignty is definitely needed. I will jump over this as well, because we will go, at least as the Younergy Crypto Community, definitely into the example of staking versus staking on Gnosis chain and the Gnosis chain ecosystem, looking at dApps that provide also staking rewards that might be interesting for Younergy Crypto. Was that a question or just mic open? Okay. Good. I think that's definitely one session where we have, or one community call topic where we also invite more experienced individuals and organization representatives to actually learn about options and experience. Liquidity mechanisms, again, here, there is the providing of liquidity, the exchanges. You lock tokens for LP tokens, and LP tokens get rewards, which is either governance participation or a share of the exchange fees. Liquidity bootstrapping pool. Again, this is something that is tangential to what we do with the YC token emissions. So I'm sure we will also have one session or one community call on this. So we would always, holler in advance, who are we inviting and what is the topic, so you get the opportunity to learn about these also through the community calls. And the other important one is the protocol-owned liquidity. I think we will go into this a little bit in the next session in ReFi. It is a very interesting mechanism. We definitely also will have our own look into it with respect from the perspective of, okay, how could protocol-owned liquidity look like for Younergy Crypto protocol, the YC protocol and its participants. Here is the example and links you can follow to learn more about what is this liquidity bootstrapping, the fair launch. Again, this primitive had its first experience in the bear market, in the last bear market. Looked really, really good, but we saw that the same primitive during the crypto bull exuberance created very different behaviors or the market was thinking very differently then. So it's hard to say these are primitives if we don't know how they really, what are the outcomes, and the outcomes can be different depending on the market sentiment. So that's very strange that we're still very coupled, too much coupled to speculation and so on. Again, just a hint, we're talking about the immune system around these decentralized value protocols. And I believe one such avenue of innovation in the upcoming wave will be also around that, like speculation or liquidity is good. I mean, for people who are developing these protocols, we believe in them when no one else does. Right? We are also speculating it, but in a positive sense, right? We're in this together, and not just day trading. That is very, very difficult and dangerous. And there also the balance between all parties need to be kept. This slide and the links I will leave for further reading. There are so-called meta aggregators. So these are for us interesting because they provide APIs, so we can connect them directly to YC Finance, but also for individual users, participants, they are interesting because they make it even more or easier to actually find or access liquidity and execute best exchanges. Basically a logic that you have to execute yourself as a trader, but if you are really just a user who wants to exchange and doesn't want to pay high prices, then these aggregators make it easier in finding the best exchanges across many different decentralized exchange protocols and liquidity pools. And with that, we're entering the final module, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. We are getting at our time limit of 1.5 hours, so totally understand if you have to leave. Just leave a feedback remark in the chat. Definitely look forward to exchanging with you in a more one-on-one or community call session, and we will just continue the recording so we can share it with you and the others later on. Any questions you might have? Good, let's dive in. Neti. So it's very hard to say what exactly a decentralized autonomous organization is. We can today say what it's not for sure. And in the past East Denver, there are really interesting presentations about what went wrong or what is typically going wrong in decentralized autonomous organizations. All the assumptions that we had 2 years ago that proved as not true. So that sharing is super interesting. I will definitely also provide links once I had a chance to look through some of them as well. But what we can definitely say is, so it is community driven. It is a lot about community and reaching out, but it's not marketing to passive users. It's more about cultivating a community that can take care of the value of its value network, the token that represents it. So it's about cultivating the self-sovereign participation. You can still decide to remain passive token holder. For example, you're just offsetting, you're only using the YCo2 protocol. You can only be a token holder and not participate in the community calls and so on. But you're also most welcome to, especially if you have the background or the learning desire, to participate in this hill climbing, in this learning together and learning to become a prosumer, meaning you're not just using the protocol, but you're also able to provide valuable services to the protocol and help the community to grow and reach its aims, short, mid, long term, and in a way that is agile, radically agile and adaptive. So it's a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. It's not a digital LLC or some other legal. Yeah, I just see the Swiss verein also needs update. So it's not a digital LLC. It's also not a digital cooperative. However, organizations like Younergy Crypto, where the protocol actually connects to real world business and shares revenue of that real world business. Again, we have now solutions like Monerium where the transaction becomes easy. We also want easier representation because the solar partners in the traditional world are LLCs, for example, and they need a legal partner to sign contracts. So maybe that's also going to be the next innovation, like we have an IBAN interface because e-money is possible. Where on earth are actually digital legal representations possible? Not in Germany. So a lot of the places are really still paper-based. They say digital, but mean PDFs and email that's not digital. Anyways, we went to look into Swiss verein, but then they also changed the apparently transparency requirements, that you have to know every participant, and that is just not feasible with internet scale organizations that are coordinating through a token. So that is the next level of global coordination, and we will need to find new forms and new legal representation that can cope with that. For now, what we really have that represents what a DAO is a club. So I find it funny that that truly is the only thing that you find, because nothing else is digital. For example, the German Genossenschaft cooperative, Genossenschaft is a bit more, is so good. It's even UNESCO World Heritage, but it cannot be digital, right? So that's where we're at. That's where we're at, folks. That needs to change. And so what we know what a DAO is this ideal. It should be capture resistant, i.e. decentralized, and it should be governance minimized, self-organization, i.e. autonomous. There are links, how this could become or create fully automated luxury communism is a book out there. It's fun, interesting read. I don't quite buy into that, or not yet for sure. More interesting is this idea that these will be the agreements, substrate of thrivable societies, that we're entering this massive online and IRL coordination games. I really like that view, and definitely see that also how it applies to the patterns we see around Younergy Crypto with the local real world communities of solar rooftops. They are creating real economic value locally, and we can prove that that value creation is sustainable because also solar backed, that value creation actually mints carbon credits and so on and so forth. But then how we use those carbon credits, not just to offset pollution, but to incentivize going greener. Coordination games. We're becoming game designers more than organizational strategists. So one insight about why is that important, not to just look with your Web2 community lens and look into retention and engagement and so on, because it's not healthy. Like, it can be done, and especially within a bull market, meaning the market is already, you know, hot and then going and looking for new protocols. It's the slippery slope you might go for and just reach out, blast, and get a lot of users and people who are supporting and so on and so forth. But it's just a mass of token holders that can be very, very slippery if then the market sentiment drops like it did now in end of mid 2022 and end of 2022. And really a lot of protocols that might have had a good chance really struggled. On the other hand, you see Maker, which literally was weatherproofing because they launched in the 2018 crypto winter, right? You see how they had the steady growth. That's not growth, that's steady learning, around 3 years, right? Before they entered the next bull market. And you see nothing red. That's what we want to see. That's why we're happy to be able to build now in the crypto winter. So the other examples, of course, ETH to the right lower corner, that definitely the example, the pattern of organic community growth. I don't know if it can be replicated, but definitely, you know, worth having as an idea. Then also another interesting protocol was Yearn Finance. Although it's, again, just maximizing for profit, yield, it's a simple formula, so it's easy for traders and that type of community to coordinate around, to build trading strategies and so on and so forth. But what's important is it was utility first and community led. So these principles and best practices is definitely something we look into, how we can make use of in building, not building, really cultivating the Younergy Crypto community. The state of the art of how to run a DAO, I'm calling it DAOps, the operations of a DAO, is pretty interesting, because I see at the very least 3 not so Web3 native, but Web2 or typical web applications that are off-chain, but have become best practices. Although there are Web3 native integrations, I still see the merit of, for example, using Discourse as forum for community participation, for sense making. Why? Because in our community, we're not just Web3 natives. Again, our solar partners and every participant that comes actually from the solar real world asset side will have an easier entry if we have discourse first, so that they can at least read, learn how the community gets to their conclusions and commitments. So that builds initial trust to actually, okay, wanting to participate in that before even, yeah, maybe entering Web3 for the first time then, right? So this course is this forum for online communities. Isn't Web3 native or anything, where you can add concrete ideas or improvement potential. There is then public deliberation on these topics of interest and this back and forth of forming an opinion and being able to cast a vote, right? So getting to a point where we can say this or that, that happens through public discourse. So discourse is so called, and it's a forum and that we will be also cultivating. Then the second part is once an opinion has been formed and there is positions and informed participation is possible, we have Snapshot that is also just a web application. It's an off-chain voting system that is online. There are multiple voting schemes possible, flexible, they can be customized. And there is proposal and voting validation that checks your signatures, everything. It is open source, so it's always good. As I mentioned, also this course is open source. And the third part, then after the community casts the vote and it's clear which direction and how many people are backing it from the community or from the available votes or voices, then the sign off or execution of the actual transaction or change of parameters happens through the multi-signature wallet that the community owns or governance transact with their signatures, with their addresses. Again, there are Web3 native integrations like Commonwealth. We might be migrating towards it, or we might have both possibilities. Not sure, but we're starting with the simple, battle-tested and integration of solutions that have proven themselves as possible DAOs. And here is an example of YC community participants. Right to the right, we have everything that is public blockchain on the Gnosis chain. We have the offsetters that use the carbon value of existing solar projects through YCo2 contract. The offset revenues goes to the Younergy Crypto governance multisig. With whatever is not needed for R&D, we can buy into YC token, which is going to fund new solar projects, and that goes to solar asset managers and into actual solar rooftops, and the revenue share, 50% of each project gets back to through IBAN interface to the multisig and gets distributed through the revenue share contract, so that YC token holders who you could buy or you get as reward because you are an offsetter using the protocol, you can claim these revenue shares from newly funded solar, and you can also claim the carbon value of these newly funded solar because you helped that happen either by going into YC token contract directly, or using the YCo2 offsets directly as an individual or organization. So this is the public participation side. The YCo2 metadata is on IPFS, also in the public and distributed side of things, Web3 native. That data gets into IPFS and YCo2 through a solution which is currently getting the name Digital Carbon. So this backend solution basically takes in the solar power production data and connects to other data providers, carbon intensity data, and connects in our case to Block Science Labs, which is a data hub for public participation of data scientists, that we can have community validation of the data and the CO2 emissions avoidance that then gets into the tokenized form and onto blockchain. So that digital carbon part is currently still closed source, but we're moving towards improvement. We're moving towards getting to agreement about the way we're calculating this, getting this into public, like CO2.storage from Filecoin is an initiative. So that is going to be developed through the future iterations, and also at some point become open source, definitely. Currently, the validation is open source. And that basically is a component that can dock onto Younergy solar asset management solution, which is a software as a service platform. That is Younergy, like that's what they built over the past 8 years already. That's their solution. But there are also others who have such digital solutions that can provide the same data quality and be part of this community validation. So it's still open to other solar asset managers, but the being a software as a service solution, and this solar asset management solution is also open to other solar partners that can go through Udera. The asset data can go through the same system and basically they can use the same system. So these participants on the solar side, the solar asset managers and solar partners, they are definitely also Younergy community participants, the providers of value, right, that the offsetters, for example, can use, and providers of value or exchanging, right, exchanging funds into solar rooftops and then sharing the value of revenues and carbon credits with the providers of the funds. So this is our community participants. You could put them into 2, 3 or 2 groups. The solar asset managers on the one side providing the value, and the offsetters on the other side actually making use of the carbon value once, and then also seeing their revenues as a participant in the community to go into more solar and receive more of the benefits of more solar. How do we coordinate, or what is there to govern, and how do we want to govern? Again, I just leave this here, maybe go through the components of it just for the sake of it, but that is definitely going to be an ongoing community call topic that we will also invite others from the DAO space. But definitely what we see is usage-based governance. So you're using the YC token and YC protocol the software that is open source. And through its usage, you also add value. You are a participant, and you are a participant that wants the value that this protocol can give you, namely the high quality carbon offsets. By using the high quality carbon offsets and then also taking the higher price, the offsetter is also signaling. That is one aspect we will go into in the next session. So to say at least 100x DAI for a ton now, knowing that you will be rewarded, but saying that and signaling that is actually super important, because that's what the scientists and climate economists say is what the ton of carbon emission should cost, and the avoidance of it should gain the project or suppliers value, so that it becomes actually an incentive for deploying more solar faster, and also for actually stop polluting. Right? At some point you rather say, okay, I rather go and buy and have buy solar and solar power and have solar rooftops, instead of dealing in carbon credits and offsets. And the other aspect is, what other incentive schemes can we actually build around the tokenized value of carbon emissions avoided. So as usage-based governance means also that you get rewarded with YC, the participation token into more solar, but also that you can buy additional YC tokens to become participants. The YC token smart contract basically exchanges X DAI into YC tokens. That X DAI goes into YC reserve, right? On the other hand, we have the YCo2 token or YCo2 NFTs that signify high quality solar carbon credits from existing solar projects. In our limited edition, we got 100% of the carbon value from the provider, which is basically TED, one of our governors as well. But in future, we can share the carbon value with existing solar projects that are docking on. It could be that they get 25 to 50% of the carbon value. We make sure that our community goes with the 100x DAI now campaign, because they have reward in participating in YC and in its current rules. So those revenues from the carbon credits, YCo2 credits, directly go as revenues into the treasury. And these are the value stocks that we govern over. We could decide on the emission amount, time, and price of YC. In the version 2 of YC token contracts, we can devise bonding and staking mechanisms. Likewise, YCo2 version 1 is individual and DAO pricing. That's it. So we have real direct interaction with people who are using it. In version 2, when we are growing, we can go into dynamic pricing, and as said, even crypto carbon pools if it makes sense. Because right now, the way we devised it, participating into building more solar gets you higher value credits, and you can use that value as an offset. But what you know is the rewards always flow into creating additional solar projects that are funded through our community. That means solar partners that participate also in YC, they are also users of the YC protocol. They get the funds in a way that is also systematically aligned with how distributed solar gets installed and when is the funding need and so on. It's on a rolling basis. So Participating in YC tokens means also the solar partners commit to sharing 50% of their revenue with the community through the safe multisig. Again, that XDAI goes into the treasury. So as a community, through usage-based governance, we want to give participation in governance to people and organizations who are actually using the protocol, because they are most interested and incentivized in keeping the protocol useful. That sounds so simple, right? Or so straightforward, but I'm betting with you that YC token is one of the only projects, token projects out there, other than, you know, for example, exchanges and exchange protocols. They also have solely users, but as far as I know, none of them has really gone through this dedicated differentiation. Are you just holding the token, or are you also using the protocol? Although for DEXs, I think it applies. It's just crypto only. And maybe what's different with YC is it connects to real world value. All right, legal wrappers, I don't go into. They are super interesting resources, really useful resources, but what's absolutely of no use is the current regulation. That I have to say, because it's such a point of frustration already, and it's not something new. Like literally from the first day I entered the space in 2017, conceptualizing energy tokens, this issue about, is this a security, is this not, is this an organization that is a new coordination mechanism, or is this a typical company and typical investors, which is a clear no from our perspective from within the Web3 worldview. But that worldview is just not understood, misunderstood, and misrepresented also by by scammers, by people who want to make a quick buck, and also who did that at large scale. Again, that's a growing pain we all have to go through together, and I believe open communication, transparency, you can't get more transparent than on a global ledger that is public and validated publicly. So again, even going after scammers is much easier through a chain than it is through our current legal and financial systems. So here it is. This is our Younergy Crypto learning community participation levels. Again, it's a concept yet. We are improving it. We are also doing the token model simulations, and the community calls will help us actually understand what it is we are building and creating together better. But basically, we think about it in action radius. As a community member, you can use, using the protocol is your means of participation, and it is a valuable contribution. You give feedback. Even if you don't give feedback, we see through the usage and the analysis of that, what is it that could be improved. You can have requests for features to improve YC finance, like that's the basic level. And for that contribution, we will have, for example, YC airdrops, because you're using YCo2 protocol token to actually offset, and so on. The active member, again, is a Web3 native or solar hero, or learning both, but really both aspects are present. And an active community member is capable of providing liquidity, so can handle the Web3 aspects well, can create solar partner referrals and so on. So connects both worlds well and is also much more active, for example, in the community calls or even in writing in the forum, in the discourse forum. So there we're thinking about ways to mint YCo2 offsets directly, or YCo2 credits directly to offset into the member's wallet. Again, we will play with amounts, numbers, and so on in the token model simulations to see what makes sense and what incentives are we creating that are simple and hence also harder to game. The YC advocate, algorithmic policy advisor, and the algorithmic policymaker. Again, these are levels where you will just be more intensely participating, right? You are communicating like Paula and I do. We are advocating, we're helping others become solar activists, and so on. And we see holding YC as the reward because we see where it gets its value from: the solar rooftops, the revenue share, the carbon value. Like, we're using the protocol, we're developing it, we're doing the outreach, so we enable informed participation, and we want to find others who want to participate at that level, become YC advocates. Could be not just solar and Web3, but also data scientists, artists, engineers. And midterm goal is really to actually also reach out to the conscious consumers and producers and the circular economies, because there's a lot of value that goes through solar power into the value chains that could show and connect energy efficiency and so on. Connecting values, right? And a policy advisor hence needs to be an advocate. So you need to have that level of connection with the protocol and the participants, even the users or potential users, to be able to advise, because only at that level you have seen enough and you have the higher vantage point than just someone who's using the protocol to offset for themselves and doesn't have more knowledge other than that. So we don't see that group being more than 100 at any time. So there's this YC 100 governance model that we're iterating currently. And the algorithmic policymaker, again, same as the above, but also long-term, keeping the long-term goal in mind, what it means to actually have transitioned to clean energy, what makes, you know, the aspect of peacemaking is definitely something. Maybe it sounds too far off for many of you, but if you are witnessing how important electricity is and how decentralized clean energy could change the games that are being currently played at global geopolitical levels, you become really more appreciative of the power a decentralized global community can cultivate. So that's why we want to have more diverse participants, especially also what it means, especially also from social and other backgrounds. Good. There, as policymakers, again, we don't see any more bigger groups than 10 at any time doing or changing something actively in the protocol. Because one important aspect of tokenized protocols is also that you don't want to change them in bi-weekly agile sprints. You actually want to create protocols that are robust and useful, and you keep them. And so that at that level of usefulness, they remain used, be used, and grow. And through that usage and growth, also the trust aspect, disseminates through the network. So we are only then talking about trustless participation or trustless networks, right? So there is this level of robustness and rugged battle-testedness that a protocol has that helps us think that it is trustless participation. You are just trusting the Lindy effect in that case. So again, we don't see any huge major hundreds of people actually changing protocol all the time, but really only a small group of people once again a policy change have been ideated, experimented with, advised, the opinion has formed in the discourse, the snapshot has taken, registered where the community stands and wants to go with this change. Only then a selected group of individuals who are capable of implementing and executing that change on protocol level, that group gets to do that in a limited time and budget, and in a limited group. So that's about it, very high level. Again, the whole learning community is also about learning how to participate, and whether these groups that we built based on the experience that we have in decentralized solar for decades, and also for over 5 years now in blockchain and energy. And the past 2 years really deep dives into DeFi and DAO ecosystem, where the learning is mutual. So there are no experts, we are all learning and adapting, but these are based on the best practices that we know from experience in each of the major domains and aspects of permissionless participation. All right, now I will come to a close with the call for participation. Here you have all the links you need to test things out, how to mint YCo2 credits, an article, video. You can follow YC on Twitter, Substack to get the invites for the community calls and the workshops. We will provide, again, if you want to join support, we're looking for hosts, both community coaches as well as course designers who can, take what we have created in the initial and improve and share it in better formats. Again, you can continue learning to become a YC community participant at any level you want to participate, and feel free to reach out to us on the discourse. That would be fantastic to get the discourse started. Yes, and if you want to participate also in the public beta test of the YC token and the revenue share contracts, you can sign up where it says beta pool participate, where you leave your name, email, so we can reach out to the beta pool participants, and your wallet, and also what level of participation you think. So we have an insight into how decentralized our endeavor can become. So thank you very much. for this, I will stop sharing and stop recording.